Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 and my next small step RP-1 career mode playthrough. We are 5 seconds away from the launch of the Hermes 1 Interplanetary probe. Ignition and immediate liftoff on our Titan IIIe space launch vehicle, which is a slightly upgraded version of our Titan IIIC that we have been using thus far in the past. We have the full stack Titan III, more of a Titan II with Titan III aspirations at the moment, but I do have future vehicles are set up with the new engines. But anyways, we have the Titan II stack here with the LR-87 and the LR-91 boosters. We have the UA-1205s on the side here, and then I have a Centaur upper stage in here ready to make the orbital insertion. This is intended to go all the way out to Venus first, but then hopefully on to Mercury. So just time warping a little bit forward, but yeah, so this is something that I built a little while ago. I do apologize for the spottiness of my videos of late. I know that there's been a lot of holidays and so forth that has been getting in the way of the timely release of my videos, but yeah, I just have not had a ton of time on my hands lately. But yeah, this is something that I built a little while back, so I'm just kind of remembering how to wrap my head around it these days. We have separation of our solid rocket boosters and ignition of the core stage, which I have reverted back to using the Aerozine and NT. Oh, nope, this is still the Carolox version, but the upper stage is Aerozine and NTO. I have unlocked the extended nozzle version of the LR-87 and the LR-91, which brings us solidly into the Titan III era of this particular booster, but that is something that we are going to be seeing a little bit later on. Make sure my staging is correct and reset guidance so that it hopefully doesn't screw anything up. But yeah, so this is heading up there, and this is a kind of a new evolution of my interplanetary probe. Like I said, this is something that I'm calling the Hermes. We have, there we go, that worked out great. We have separation and ignition of our LR-91 upper stage. And everything else theoretically should be all set. There we go, and the fairing comes away. You can see we have the RL-10 Centaur upper stage here with some RCS ready to push us into an interplanetary trajectory. And then we have a bit of a chunker of a spacecraft up here. So this is what I'm calling the Hermes spacecraft. And this is kind of a new science bus that I have put together with as many experiments as I have now, although it's already out of date. Like, I already have new science that is coming out in 60 days, I want to say. If I go to my tech, yeah, deep space science experiments and surface science has a whole bunch of new experiments, but they were not going to be ready in time for these particular interplanetary launch windows. So this is the best that I could do with what I have. What this is intended to do is to finally try to do something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, which is get to Mercury by way of Venus. So we have a Centaur upper stage here, the 2RL-10 upper stage, that is pushing us now into our final orbit, and then we are going to have about 3,700 meters per second of delta V remaining to push us out towards Venus. And then I'm thinking that what this is going to do is we are just going to have a whole lot of orbits and flybys of Venus to eventually get us on a trajectory that will allow us to insert into the orbit of Mercury. So I am indeed hoping that this is going to get to Mercury orbit, but I'm not super confident of that. That's something that's going to be a lot easier to do with technology that I'm getting even as we speak, but I wanted to give it a shot anyways and just see what I could do. This may be the kind of thing where this is still flying and attempting to get into that orbit by the time I've already built and launched something with much better technology, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so we are in a good orbit. That's just fantastic. So now, oops, and that's this thing does not have, it does not turn these into garbage, which is unfortunate. Or the upper stage has not been marked as debris, is what I was trying to say there. All right, so this gets us on a good trajectory that is going to intercept Venus. But that is just the very first step in this thing's journey. So let's take a look at what I can do, because what I want to do, if we add patches, you can see that this gets us into kind of a wonky trajectory that's got a kind of a orbit that is pretty inclined based on where we're touching the orbit of Venus. So what I want to do is flip this around, I think. So I'm likely to have to adjust this even further, but this is kind of, oops, we're buried inside, but if I go to here, there, now I have a para Venus. But yeah, something like this is kind of what I'm looking at. If I get even more patches and then kind of increase my... Yeah, so because you can see that we have our encounter and then we have another closest approach. So we're going to be planning multiple flybys of Venus to try to drop ourselves down. So the mission that I had in mind when I put this together was Messenger, which was something that was launched in 2004 on board a Delta II rocket, so pretty modern. But it was intended, or it was a mission that did what I'm trying to do, where it flew by Venus to get to Mercury, but it did so by doing, it flew by Earth once, and then it flew by Venus twice, and then it flew by Mercury 3 times, so it took a really long time to get there. But it finally entered orbit of Mercury in 2011, having launched in 2004. So I'm going to see if I can't do something kind of similar to that, but also hopefully a little bit faster, because we have a pretty chunky tank of fuel here, and we're able to get on a Venus trajectory with a full 6,000 meters per second of delta V. And I honestly don't know if that's going to be even close to possible to use to get us into orbit around Mercury, but I just want to see, I just want to see what I can do by doing a couple of flybys and then adjusting my trajectory accordingly, because this should, in theory, have the solar power to last for a good long time. And that should allow me to kind of play around with it. And I have not even accepted the mission, so this could just be a science vessel for a little while. But step 1 is to get into an intercept with Venus, and this looks pretty good to me so far. Like I said, we are going to be adjusting this quite a bit on our way so that we can get the exact perfect flyby that is going to allow us to meet it again, and that'll be easier to do once we're in interplanetary space. So I think I'm just going to make this one happen. All right, we're warping around, getting ready to take off on our interplanetary trajectory. We have done a couple of orbits while we were waiting for the correct time to begin the burn. But yeah, so this is kind of a Hail Mary. Like, I hope that this actually does what I want it to do, but I really don't have any really high expectations for it. I could be just like completely wrong in my assumption that I can get into orbit with anything less than a full tank of 6,000 meters per second of delta V into orbit around Mercury. The delta V calculator that I usually use says that I need 6,300 meters per second to capture, but that assumes that you're coming from Earth. So I'm hoping that if I use a couple of gravity assist flybys of Venus, that will change my trajectory enough to shave off a couple thousand meters per second and make that something that is possible again. And if not, then it's just going to be a fun exploration of orbital dynamics, because even just getting the gravity assists that I need to get a flyby of Mercury is going to be really fun, I think. I think that's going to be fun anyways. Hopefully you guys find that entertaining. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, is that even if this does not actually succeed in getting into Mercury's orbit, I still think this should be a ton of fun getting out there, because we should, I have plenty of delta V to at least get a flyby of Mercury. So we are either going to orbit Mercury or we are going to smash into it. One way or the other, we are getting to Mercury, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, we are just about finished with this first part of our burn. And then we will say farewell to this lovely liquid hydrogen upper stage, and I find myself just hoping and wishing that maybe someday I will be able to use radiators and efficient pointing of my vessel to use a liquid hydrogen stage, like, and bring it with me. Like, I would love that someday. Maybe that will be something that I can do. It is definitely not this day, however. Because that boil off is like, you know, it's very real for sure. All right, I have no idea what I did to my trajectory, but I did some futzing around with it manually to get it nice and tight once again. So let's go ahead and make that burn. And that's a nice thing that I can do with my Centaur upper stage, once again, saving some Delta V on my final stage. I'm hoping to get something here that actually looks pretty darn close to what the final trajectory is, so that I can save as much Delta V on our final stage as possible. But yeah, so this and the other two Hermes vehicles that I'm sending out, that I'm calling, you know, Messenger of the Gods, so that I can send these out to visit the other god-named planets. But the intention is to try to knock out a bunch of my flyby and orbit contracts, because I need money, mostly. All right, that looks better. Let's just use RCS to bring this in even closer. There we go, nice and tight. And that should, well, that'll get us to Venus, is really the only important thing that's going to come of that. So what I can do now is I can separate this spacecraft. And I'm back after doing a little bit of fixing on this spacecraft. These thrusters apparently were not correct. They were reading as tech level 0 nitrogen, and that was definitely not what I had intended with this giant bucket of Aerozine and NTO up here. So anyways, that is done now. Hopefully I don't have to do any more save editing on this thing. But yeah, we are all moving and everything seems to be working just fine. We are on our way out towards Venus now. We have a pretty good trajectory. Let's see, what is my next thing that's coming? We're obviously reconditioning, blah, blah. Then we are launching an Apollo 1 in just a couple of days. And then we have some more transfer windows for the other Hermes spacecraft. So yeah, let's just get this out of the system. And also I can point towards the sun. There we go. So yeah, this does actually have enough power even around Earth, and it will have even more power and be able to last for a very long time once we are down at the orbit of Venus and then further on Mercury. So yeah, I've got a couple of these Hermes spacecraft that are coming up. I've got one that's headed towards Vesta, one that's headed towards Jupiter, to finish up, like I said, those flyby and orbit contracts that I have not yet finished. But yeah, I want to do a couple of these to kind of catch up on some of the things and kind of complete my exploration, right? Like, there's a lot of exploration of the solar system that I can be doing, and now's the time. Just whenever I get a chance on these transfer windows. But yeah, so we don't have too much going on for another month, or 10 days until the Apollo 1 launch. So I'm just going to time warp until we get out of the sphere of influence of Earth. All right, so we are now in interplanetary space officially and all that. So we are heading on out and around. You see, we meet up with Venus right over here, and then we leave it again. So what I'm going to do now is we are going to focus target. And what I'm actually going to do is, let's see, how about... something like this, because I just want to see, with more patches, what we can do to our orbit. So you see, at that distance, we're able to make pretty dramatic changes, but there's still only certain types of changes that we're going to be able to make. It's going to be difficult to make this orbit do whatever we want, you know what I mean? So it's just a matter of playing with it to see what I can do to get us out closer to Mercury. So I'm going to play with this for a minute, and I'll be right back. All right, so this is what the first adjustment I think I'm going to make is going to look like, and it is going to cost me about 100 meters per second in delta V, but it's a pretty dramatic change that I was not really able to affect from my Earth transfer, mostly because I didn't know how to do it. But I've played around with this to the point where I have something that looks pretty good, and the interesting qualities of this are that it mostly brings us dramatically in closer towards Mercury. So you can see our solar periapsis is a lot lower now. It's most of the way between Venus and Mercury's orbits at this point. So we're getting close to a point where we can actually touch the orbit of Mercury. And on a second flyby, we should be able to adjust this even further. The next important piece of this is you'll notice that this matches the inclination of Venus pretty perfectly, like unbelievably perfectly, actually. I'm like really surprised at how well that actually matches the inclination. And you can see that, let's see, where's a good way to put this with all the stupid laser light show happening. But yeah, you can see like I have the Venus orbit line is flat right now, and you can see the Earth orbit line that I'm in now, or the trajectory that I'm in now, starts way up here and then dips down below this line on the other side. Which means we're pretty well inclined relative to Venus right now. So before we go any further, we're going to want to match that inclination, and doing that for free sounds wonderful. So that is what we are going to do. And then my plan is, after I make this encounter, I am going to make another maneuver that encounters Venus again, hopefully within the next couple of years and not like forever out there. But then I'm going to try to match the inclination of Mercury, which is even further away from the inclination that I was in, and also bring us in a little bit closer. I think I'm just going to let this encounter happen in this way and spend this much delta V to get that exact encounter, which is a little bit closer to the actual encounter with Venus than I would perhaps like. I bet you I could do this cheaper if I did this further out. Yeah, okay, I definitely thought I was a lot closer than I actually was. Or I was doing that a lot further out than I actually was. But I was actually making that maneuver like 3 days before I hit the actual sphere of influence of Venus, which made it not cheap at all. So yeah, for 10 meters per second, I can get something pretty darn similar. So yeah, that sounds about right. There we go. And that's a nice big deflection that we'll get. And yeah, so hopefully that will allow us to get a little bit closer, and you can see the change in our the change that the gravity is going to have on us is, if we didn't have this gravity assist, you would expect us to move through this orbit in a straight line, right? So down here. So this business here and coming out on this angle is all free delta V. So I'm hoping that changing my inclination dramatically to match Mercury's, and also to slow down my orbit, because this is shaving off a huge chunk of velocity here. I hope that is going to reduce the capture delta V requirements below 6,000 or 6,300, because that's what I would need it to be. So yeah, that is what I'm going to plan on. So I am going to just put down a timer on this. There we go. And we will come back to that another time. So yeah, successful mission so far. We are pointed at the sun. Let's just go ahead and do all the automation. I don't think there's any science for us to do except for mass spectrometry 3, which is a new science experiment for me, as well as orbital perturbation. Oh, we do actually have the RPWS science experiment on here. That's the plasma wave detector, which is something new that I have just put on. So yeah, there is some new science on here, thank goodness. So we do have that. And we should have perpetual power, especially once we turn off avionics. So yeah, we are good to go on this first Hermes craft. All right, here on the pad, we have Edward Walters, Donna Smith, and Inessa Bogolyubova, who are our first crewed Apollo astronauts. 3, 2, 1, ignition. And we have the slow and ponderous liftoff of a Paladin 2B spacecraft, or Paladin 1 spacecraft, because this is the model that is based very closely to the Saturn 1B. It has 8 H1 engines and a single J2 second stage in there. And yeah, so that's kind of what I've settled on there. But yeah, this is the first crewed Apollo launch. Yes, indeed. So this is basically like Apollo 7, which was the first actual crewed launch. But I'm calling it Apollo 1 because it is my first crewed Apollo launch. So yeah, there we go. This crew was commanded by Walter Schira, Command Module Pilot Don Eisel, and Lunar Module Pilot Walter Cunningham, even though they didn't actually have a lunar module, because they launched on something fairly similar to this, as I understand it. So yeah, I'm very well kind of matching with the historical first crewed Apollo launch here. So yeah, we are launching, and this is going to be basically just the orbital flight with at least 3 crew, and we should also hit the crew count record 3 crew milestone mission as well. We are going to hopefully a very circular orbit at about 300 kilometers, which should get us above 275. We are launching directly into that because I never have learned my lesson about launching into a low parking orbit and then moving up, even when I should. The objectives that I have for this particular mission are pretty much identical to what NASA had in mind for Apollo 7. I'm trying to show that the Apollo service command module and service module are exactly, I'm trying to prove that the Apollo service module and command module are habitable and workable for long periods of time. The actual Apollo 7 mission lasted 11 days, and we do need to hit at least 10 to complete this contract, which, thank goodness, because I am out of freaking money. Like, I think I have an easy way to... Yeah, there we go. I'm down to like 200,000, and that's just because I accepted my Vesta orbit contract as well. So yeah, I've spent a lot of money on tooling and preparing for my upcoming Mars missions. So yeah, we really needed to get this something paid off the ground. But yeah, we are trying to prove that the Apollo service module and command module will work and will be suitable for our astronauts to fly and use in the future. We have separated our first stage, the Saturn 1 first stage, and ignited the J2 and launched off the launch escape system, and now we can see the big, beautiful Apollo command module up there. Which, after you guys have all let me know exactly what you think down in the comments, which I always appreciate, about what I should use next, because I have been concerned about the expense of sending up Apollo modules, because these are like ridiculously expensive. But in just the very next command module node in the research tree is the Apollo Block 3, which is about 1/3 of the price. So that basically makes it pretty much there's no reason for me to use the generic Mark 1-3 command pod. There's no reason I wouldn't just use the Apollo instead, because it is gorgeous and fantastic and kind of what everybody else uses, which I'm not too sad about. So I am happy to continue using this, and that is going to be how I move on into space. And the premium that I'm paying for this version of the Apollo is just what I'm going to call the price of progress, basically. So I am going to just work on dealing with that expense while I have to, and then once we get the Mark III, or the Block 3 version, that is when we will be able to lower our costs for access to space as we build things like space stations and so forth. Which I do have plans for, by the way. I actually have designed already a lunar space station that should work with the technology that I have now, and that's just waiting for me to basically have the money to launch that mission, because, like I said, I am not doing great on the cash flow at the moment. Yeah, so this particular mission profile, it looks like it's actually going to cost me 100% of my fuel just to get this into orbit, and then it's going to cost me a little bit more to bring our orbit up to the intended trajectory. But that is just fine because I have accidentally left this service module completely full, so we are going to have, whoops, there, off that goes, I guess. Whoa. RCS on, please. Holy crap. Okay, disengage, disengage. Stop, stop, stop. Kill rotation. We have an emergency here. A stuck thruster or something has caused us to fly completely off the handle. Oh my gosh, what is happening? Alright, we are in a little bit of trouble here. Am I just like wildly unbalanced? What is happening? Okay, this is a phantom force issue is what's happening here, because that is moving in a way that is very, very weird. Okay, don't mind the little time skip here, but I reverted my save because phantom forces caused my Apollo service module to spin wildly out of control forever. So we are going to just try this one more time and see if I can't, if nothing else, identify what might be going on here, or if it was just a single time fluke. We seem to be moving pretty darn okay. We're just rotating around. Yeah, everything seems to be okay now, which I'm really quite happy about. Yeah, so, oops, I did definitely forget that, I forgot to move this RCS so that it wasn't clipping into the service module umbilical latch thing there, but it seems to be working okay, so I'm not going to stress about it too much on this one. But anyways, yeah, here we go. We are now on our way. The service module is pushing us into our final orbit. Our thrust-to-weight ratio is very, very low because I forgot to underload the service module. It's not supposed to go up with 100% fuel every time, I think. You're supposed to kind of fill it based on the needs of your mission, but because otherwise then you're going to have a very long burn time and a very low thrust-to-weight ratio. But that should be fine. We actually ended up needing a good amount of that fuel this time. So this is actually a really nice engine because it has 50 ignitions. It's pressure-fed, which is not great, so that does require you to use high-pressure tanks, but it does have a really long burn time, which means, which is why I wound up using it for a lot of future missions as well. I'm looking forward to the even more advanced version of the AJ-10, which is a lot smaller than this gigantic Bell. But yeah, we are on our way up and recreating the Apollo 7 experience here, where we are... that was launched on October 11th, 1968. We are just a little bit late, still about 7 years late for a lot of this, and that's kind of where we are on the milestones. From what I've been told, mentioned by the devs, I'm actually at a point now where I may be late as far as the matching real-life milestones. However, I am very much my technology path, my technology income, my research is taking us to the point where I am going to rapidly catch up and then accelerate past where reality is eventually. That's a place that a lot of more experienced players get to earlier in their career, but I'm happy to be there now. So hopefully at some point I'm going to get to do a lot more advanced, more modern stuff with the end of the tech tree, which I am really excited about because I'm just looking forward to having more and more exciting engines and life support technology and cool habitable space station modules and do all kinds of really neat stuff. So looking forward to it, but for now we are taking our first steps back into space on the Apollo program. I haven't completely decommissioned the Gemini program, but I also don't see myself training any of my astronauts on the use of it. Inessa and Donna are giving me some very strange looks. They don't seem to have their helmets on for some reason, engineer and scientist. You go into the Apollo module and you can see that they've actually created a like they've painted the texture of the actual Apollo command module inside this model, which is really neat. So this is actually what that would look like inside the Apollo module. Obviously it's flat textures and not actual buttons, but it's still incredibly cool, and I wouldn't want to do all that in 3D modeling work. So yeah, no complaints there. This is incredibly, incredibly cool. And we are just getting up to the top of our orbit, about 20 seconds remaining. All right, so there we go. We have gotten into a good orbit at 300 kilometers circular. Vessel complete, and crew count a record of 3 crew. You've set a new crew count record at 3. I wonder if that's the last one or if there's more of those. There's a crew duration of 30 days that we have not hit, but I would like to. I thought that... Had I done that one already? I wonder if I'd done this one already and it just didn't work. But yeah, I have some space station plans that I'm going to do that is going to get us there. So that is going to be something that's coming up. And now we just need to stay here for about 10 days, which is fabulous. And I think, yep, VESA transfer window in 17. So there's nothing to keep us from actually sitting down and doing that right now so that I don't have to worry about... that mission getting all weird and wonky. So we need to spend 10 days here in orbit. So it's time for us to do a couple of things. First, I want to move in a way that is going to protect our service module from the heat of the sun. So we are going to point in a way that occludes it by pointing the engine bell directly at the sun. What the actual Apollo spacecraft would do on the way towards the moon is they would do what's called a barbecue roll, which is literally just like rolling like this. So they would just put themselves into a very slow roll. That's too fast. But they would do like a very slow roll like this that would evenly distribute the solar energy across the surface. But I think for purposes of Kerbalism, we are better off just pointing our butt at the sun, and hopefully that is going to deal with that temperature properly. Because I don't think... Yeah, there's no MLI layers on here, so this stuff might just burn off like really quickly. Hopefully it doesn't. But, yeah, that number is really coming down pretty quickly, so I'm a little concerned, but we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, we are just kind of hanging out in orbit, so let's go ahead and start testing our systems. So we can't shut down our avionics. We have people in there, so we do need to worry about the battery power that we have here. We do have fuel cells, so let's get down to those. Those are down in the service module itself. We would like to turn on the LOX-to-GOX converter to make sure that we have plenty of oxygen, because we definitely don't have enough to make this entire trip. We have 63 days based on the boil-off that we have so far. Liquid hydrogen, thankfully, is not being used that quickly by the fuel cells, but we need to make sure that we are dumping excess water. That gives us 9 days of water. We should have more than 9 days of water. I don't know if my math is wrong here, but I think 0.03 per minute is a lot more than minus 0.484 per hour. So in theory, that should be perpetual. So we'll just have to keep an eye on this to make sure that that doesn't go too badly. It looks like I have dramatically under provisioned the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen in the fuel cell, because it looks like that's only going to last me about 3 days. So this mission is actually probably going to be a failure right off the bat, if that only is going to last that long. So yeah, that's I guess that's my fault. I'm not sure what I thought that I'd looked at the time that the liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen would last when being burned by the fuel cell, but I must have gotten that mixed up. So yeah, that's just not going to last all that long, which is pretty unfortunate, but you know, that's poor planning on my part. So yeah, that is probably going to mean that we are going to fail the mission, but we at least did get that milestone, and we will be able to spend a couple days in orbit before the liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen burn off and are used by the fuel cell, and then we will have just battery power, which is about 7 hours or so. So yeah, in about 3 days, I'm going to actually put down I'm actually going to just stay with the spacecraft, I think. Yeah, so I'm not sure what I did wrong there, but clearly I did something. So we're going to have to modify the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen in the service module to make sure that that is going to last as long as it needs to. Man, that is a hefty... wow, and that fuel cell... interesting. I wonder if I'm supposed to, like, turn this off, maybe, every so often? Like, what happens if once this thing fills up, I wonder? Okay, so that's maxed, and now we have 8 days and 9 days. So yeah, now it looks like it does shut off, and it only burns as much power as it needs to once the batteries are full, which is going to dramatically extend the life of our fuel cell, of our liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. But it's still probably not going to be quite enough. It might squeak out barely, but yeah, on future missions, we are going to have to do something about that. All right, so a couple other things that we can do while we are still burning off the energy in this fuel cell is we can do ion sensing, attitude control, which I imagine is... I brought the space television broadcast, which was like the Christmas broadcast from the moon, but it looks like that needs to be space high, so we are in an invalid situation for that one, so we're not going to be doing that, but we are doing ion sensing, attitude control, so that is some good science that we are going to be able to get from this. So yeah, that's about as much additional work as we can do. Other than that, it's just hoping that our batteries last longer than they're actually going to last. All right, that's it. Our liquid hydrogen tanks are empty. We have 8 hours of electric charge remaining, and 2 days and 10 hours of orbit left on this contract. Gosh darn it. So yeah, we're going to have to launch another one of these Apollo missions, but we're going to have to pack a whole bunch more liquid hydrogen, or maybe just put some freaking MLI layers on it, because it looks like this has burned off a ton of the liquid hydrogen, and that makes up the difference between what the liquid oxygen and the liquid hydrogen. So yeah, that I think is most of the issue. Is this didn't have any MLI layers on it, and I guess it should have, or was supposed to. I'm not actually sure, but yeah, so I will do that and try that again, and hopefully that is not going to bankrupt us too much. If we end up failing that mission, we're just going to have to kind of stack up another one of these Apollo missions after we finish up with the rest of what we're working on. Because we have a bunch of interplanetary missions that we need to get done to deal with transfer windows. But that being said, it's time now to bring this mission back home. And I do have enough time, enough electric charge in the battery to bring us around once more so that I can actually land in the daylight. So we are going to bring down our perigee at this point. We have 7 hours of battery remaining, which should be just fine, especially once we get rid of the service module. Fire up this engine and bring down our perigee to about 60 kilometers. And there we go. All right, perfect. So, yeah, that's about it for this. So now I can just kind of move this in such a way that it's not going to bump us or cause us any trouble once we separate off. We fly around a little bit until we get to until we interface with the atmosphere, and then it actually turned us around a little bit, which is good. So now I think we're ready to... I think this actually comes off here at this point. So we are going to unlock the umbilical and decouple. And then activate the RCS, surface velocity negative. Then use our RCS to kind of push us down towards the surface. There we go, the service module coming around in the absolute worst possible way. Boop. Alright, but there's got to be a way for me to move off of here. The tricky thing is the Apollo doesn't have like full RCS control. Like I can't just push in any direction because it's not meant to be used for docking, but I do have control in this one direction, so let's just kind of push off there, and that seems to have worked. Now we are kind of off on our own and heading in a different direction. So yeah, there we go. That's much better. All right, so I'm now going to follow the instructions that I was given by one of my commenters, who tells me that before hitting the atmosphere, I should orient the craft for descent, surface velocity 180.00. So I guess I need to be rolled upside down. So let's do that now. We are going to turn on the descent mode and turn the offset limit off, or down to 0. Now that we are stable, I am unticking pitch and yaw. Oh, not on here. Not on here. On the actual command module. Aha, show actuation toggles. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm actually supposed to turn off the yaw and pitch controls here. That way the RCS on this part will not be able to do that. So this just turning off and MacLeod smartass just turns off the, just makes it like kill rotation in that particular axis. And so that doesn't actually help me in any way. And that's why I've been fighting with it so much. So you can see I'm sliding just tiny bit off of the retrograde marker because of that. So that is what we need. And that is how we set that control. So now I can only deal with roll, and that's it. I can't have any other. I have no other control, which is fine. So what I can do now is, once you are starting to hit the atmosphere, slowly increase the slider, this center of mass offset, to whatever is needed to for my current descent profile. Don't just wobble it up like I just did. That will cause it to wobble, and that is actually not a good thing. Go figure. And I can even, now that I'm kind of stable, I can even turn off smartass entirely and just do this manually. Pin this there so I don't lose that again. So yeah, that's the basic information that I got, and that is what we are going to do. So now with our center of mass offset, now that we are at about 90,000 meters above the surface, I can use this to very carefully adjust my pitch using this and not using anything else. It's just the mechanical offset of the load inside here, which I imagine there was some kind of thing that they had that was able to deal with that. And this will just hold my orientation at 180 degrees rolled around so that we can re-enter safely. So what I want to do is I'm just going to use the offset limit to increase and decrease the amount of offset that I have as we come down into the atmosphere to maintain my vertical speed so that I don't become too ballistic and I don't descend too quickly. I can stay in the upper part of the atmosphere while I shed velocity. And that means that doing it this way means I don't have to like flip the craft around all the time to make sure that I am, aligned properly. With the center of mass offset. So that means that I don't have to worry about I don't have to flip around 180 degrees every time I want to change the direction. I can just very carefully use this, because what I was basically doing was putting it 100% offset all the time and then like whipping around wildly to manage that. And that, when you put it like that, it becomes pretty obvious why that was not the right thing to do. So yeah, I'm at about 49%, and I'm just going to accelerate down a little bit now because I feel like I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty stable. We are lowering our vertical speed to slow our descent a little bit. Let's move this up to like 60 because I want to cut my velocity a little bit as we get down, because I'd like to kind of zero out my vertical speed closer to like 50 or 60 kilometers. And that will allow me to, ooh, I am way off balance here. Maybe I do surface velocity roll. There we go. There we go. Yeah, so long as it's kind of holding me mostly steady, that seems to be fine. But yeah, it's slowing down our vertical speed, and I can just like slowly bring it up 10% or so at a time, which is helping me to manage my speed. So yeah, this works a lot better. So thank you very much to Ashnoom on the Discord who provided that information. So I really appreciate that. A lot of people have tried to tell me how to do this, but I have not listened properly or not understood it properly, I think. So yeah, we are coming down now, and this looks really quite good. All right, so we've pushed it up to 100% offset, and that's bringing us down to 60 meters per second. So that slowed us down quite a bit, but you can see now that our velocity has dropped pretty sharply. So I am actually now just slowly lowering our offset down to 0, because now it's fine for us to start going down because we are 45 kilometers up. And there we go. Now we are descending. So I can turn this off. And it's time now to break off the forward heat shield, which I was informed you're not supposed to break off early. And the drogue chutes. Ooh, bonk. Ooh, see ya. Wow, that was a little bit weird. A little yo-yo action there. So yeah, there we go. That is a much safer, much more stable way to do that. So thank you again. This is why I love doing this on YouTube, because I have you wonderful people telling me better ways to play and to improve my play style, and that generally leads me towards historical facts that I did not understand. Like, that's probably a lot closer to the way Apollo actually landed than the way that I had been doing it previously. So we have our drogues are now out. Offset is off. Turn these on now, but it doesn't really matter. And now that we're getting pretty low, I can now, there we go, and that cuts our drogue chutes and releases our mains, which are reefed now, and we are descending nice and carefully down to the surface of the ocean. All right, so just 1.5 kilometers down until we hit the surface of the ocean and begin sending out the recovery team to retrieve our astronauts who hopefully have gotten home safely. Inessa Bogol-Yubova, Edward Walters, and Donna Smith coming home safely from my first crewed Apollo flight, which succeeded on the crew count record but failed on the actual mission I launched the darn thing for. We are going to have to launch another mission that is going to be able to meet that, because what happened was we burned off our liquid hydrogen too quickly. Either that means that we did not have enough provision to begin with, or too much of it burned off due to the lack of MLI layers insulating the tank. So some combination thereof, and we have now Splashdown, so I will figure something out, and maybe I will pack on some more fuel, adjust the amounts that are in the service module for next time, and hopefully we'll be able to launch that before we fail this contract. But I will still call this a successful mission because we have 3 astronauts that are coming home. All right, so each of our crew got about 2 years worth of extra retirement time, so they are going to be sticking with us until late 1983, it looks like. Just fabulous. And they all advanced to level 1, which is just fabulous. So yeah, we got some science, got some stuff, so spend some of those upgrade points, KCT upgrade points in the vehicle assembly building. We have Space Station Aeromaterials Science coming soon. which gets us absolutely nothing, but it does unlock all sorts of stuff, like the whole next tier of rocketry. So yeah, that is what we are working on as far as science is concerned, but then we are moving on to the other unlock, electronics research. Then we are getting new experiments, probes, communications, solar panels, all that sort of cool stuff. High communications again, and then RTGs, which I'm psyched about, which is the multi-100 watt RTG is going to be really fabulous for deep space missions. And speaking of deep space missions, early nuclear propulsion is really going to get us there as well. Improved capsules is where we get that Block 3 Apollo, and then early space stations is where we get like the Skylab model, which is going to be very cool and help me out a lot with the building of space stations and so forth. So that is kind of what we have coming up. I have my next Hermes mission is ready on the pad to launch for this Vesta transfer window. Then we have a Jupiter transfer window. We have another Hermes ready for that, which I think I'm going to just like get into orbit and then just like bounce around the Jovian system, which should be just a ton of fun. And then the big 3-parter Mars exploration system, which I have taken a lot of feedback that you have given me and also done a lot of testing and work myself to make sure that that is going to, well, fingers crossed, work hopefully pretty well. I have no idea if that's actually going to work out or if it's going to be a massive waste of time, but I'm very hopeful that that is going to be something pretty darn cool. But I think that is going to do it for us today. We've made a little money, learned a lot about how to launch and land Apollo spacecraft, and found some deficits that in the design that we can fix for next time. We launched a interplanetary spacecraft, one of several, and are right down the preparation for the next couple of missions. And I'm really excited to get back to it. So we're going to call it there. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.